All right. Well, we have Matt Chance here. He is a local and state legend. He is the Bowling Green High School athletic director, cross country, and track coach. And like I said, Matt is a legend in the area and state. He has a resume that anyone would dream to have as a coach. Matt's a 67-time cross country and track conference champion. I'm going to repeat that. 67-time cross country and track conference champion.
That's a lot.
27 district titles under his belt. He's a two-time state champion with the 2009 cross-country team and the 2023 track team. He's coached several relay and individual state track champions along with 25 state qualifying teams. He's without a doubt going to go down as one of the best to do it in the state of Missouri. And last but not least, he's a husband and a father of two boys. That's Ben and Brock, and they seem to be enjoying the running lifestyle as well. It's an honor to have you on, Matt. We've actually been talking about this for probably, 2-3 months, getting him on.
Wow.
And we've just kind of been waiting for you to get out of the track world and get you a little downtime here.
Now, thanks for having me.
One of those state championships was his son, too, so that's kind of cool.
Yeah, and the 2009 team was my cousin Brandon was on that one, I believe. And I tell you what, this is what I wanted to start out with. I'd never been to a cross-country meet ever in my life. I didn't know what to expect, and I had a girlfriend at the time. Her younger sister was on the cross-country team, and I just got done deer hunting. It was down at the fairgrounds in Bowling Green, and I stopped by BG Diner, got some breakfast to go, and I was like, well, I'm just going to go down here and sit in the stands and, just kind of watch and see what's going to go on. Little did I know that as soon as the gun goes off, parents and everybody's just scattering. I mean, it's just everybody's just taking off running, trying to get to the next turn to cheer on everybody. I was a little out of place. I had no idea what I was doing, so I was trying to eat my breakfast on the run, but I just thought it was a pretty cool atmosphere. So if y'all are ever wanting to go see a cross-country meet, go check it out because it is a lot of fun. But anyways, we kind of want to start with, I've known you for a super long time. Kyle's known you for a long time. You started coaching in 97 at Bowling Green. Did you take the athletic director position?
No. My first job when I came to Bowling Green was I was a PE teacher and taught health, and I coached. Actually started out as a middle school football assistant coach because they didn't have cross country, wasn't open at the time, and then I did freshman boys basketball. And then I was the head middle school track coach my first year.
So they didn't have cross country when you started?
They had it, but there was somebody that was already coaching it.
Gotcha.
Steve Hunter, who's he's our halftime assistant superintendent right now. He was the head cross country coach at the time.
Heck yeah. I kind of wanted to start with, kind of where you're from and kind of what led you as a Hawkeye fan in Iowa. I kind of want to start the early childhood.
Sure.
Where are you from? How many siblings you got? All that good
Yep.
stuff.
Well, I grew up in a very small town about the size of Curryville called La Villa, Iowa. I went to high school at a school about the size of Bowling Green called Albia High School. And that's kind of where I grew up and played 4 sports my senior year in high school. And in Iowa, baseball's in the summer, so I could go through my whole track season and then go right into baseball. But I also played 4 years of basketball, played 3 years of baseball. Only did 1 year cross country and only did 3 years of track because I was kind of a late bloomer. In the running world, I started out and thought I was going to be a basketball player and thought I was going to be a baseball player, and that's what you did growing up. Played a lot of baseball growing up, and then then I kind of moved into track and cross country. About my sophomore year, I got into track, and then my senior year, I got into cross country too.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was kind of wondering, where the passion for running and all that started, and it sounds like it wasn't really at an early age.
Not at all.
It kind of came to you, tail into high school.
Yep.
Was it any of your family runners?
No,
or just
that's the thing. My dad growing up was a big supporter of athletics. He was one of those kind of guys that he wanted us to play sports, not work. Like my brother and I have one brother and one sister. We had jobs growing up in high school, but it never was to the point where he wanted us to skip sports to go work. And he made that very clear, and he supported us financially. If we needed to go out and go out to eat or something like that, he would give us money. but it was no secret. He wanted us to play sports, and I was able to play 4 sports in my senior year at Albion, and don't regret it one bit. Loved being involved in teams and being around sports.
Yeah, was your dad you're all in or nothing, or was he like you got to give it 110%? Kind of how?
Yeah,
how was...
he was very on us to be successful in sports. My dad, growing up, there were several meets that I would have, track meets, where I thought maybe I ran pretty well. And Dad would be like, "Hey, why didn't you beat that kid?" So there was never any excuses with my dad. And that's kind of the way I am as a coach. I'm not big with excuses. If we get beat, we get beat. They trained harder than us. They beat us fair and square. But the same way I coach my boys and boys and girls cross country teams, the same way that I coach my kids. That we're gonna work as hard as we can, but we're not gonna have excuses if we don't reach the goals that we.
I think a lot of people that don't really know enough about it, they see it as, well, it's just sports. It's not like a big deal, but it is a big deal at that age, because at that age, it might be basketball, but when they're 25, it might be their job.
Exactly.
So if you can't take that serious, how are you supposed to take your career serious or running a family serious?
Yep.
So that stuff
agree.
is it's important. You're supposed to care.
Yep.
You're supposed to be mad when you fail,
Yep.
or put some drive in you to go out there and train harder.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, sports is. I mean, it's a foundation for how you're going to live your life. There's so many life lessons in any sport
Yep.
you do. I mean, in running, you got to overcome. You get tired, well, you got to keep going. You're going to have that as a parent. I'm not a parent. Or
Long
dad.
distance running might be the most strenuous on your brain of any sport. Like, you got to be tough to be a long distance runner.
I
don't
wouldn't
have
know.
it.
I personally wouldn't know if I'm running a long distance, something's chasing me. But okay, so you're in Iowa. Grew up in Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
Where'd you end up? Did you end up going and running or doing anything in college?
When I finished high school, I'd kind of made the decision I was just going to stay local and go to Indian Hills Community College in Ottumwa. And probably maybe 6 weeks after graduation, baseball was just kind of finishing up. And I had one of my best friends was big into rodeo, and he was going on a scholarship to Fort Scott Community College in Kansas. And so, I'd been through about 6 weeks after high school, and I was like, man, do I really want to just stay at home and go to the community college and not play sports, or do I want to go do this? And this coach from Fort Scott had come down to visit me after the state track meet and really wanted me to join his team my freshman year in college. And I kind of just said, I don't think I'm going to run. Well, after 6 weeks, I called him up and said, hey, is that offer still good? And I'd like to come up there with my best friend and go to Fort Scott and run track and cross country. And to this day, that was probably one of the best decisions of my life. That coach is still a coach I talked to him today before I came here. Talked to him a lot during the cross country season. His name is David Ramsey. Has been a big influence on my life, but that was a huge decision in my life to make that decision that I was going to leave my hometown and go 5 hours away to a community college to run track and cross country. And I stayed there for 1 year. Learned just a tremendous amount about distance running. Just my whole world changed with the different training that we did, running with kids that were better than me.
Kind of walk us through like the training thing, because that's one thing that I've always kind of wondered, and like how technology has advanced that. Like, you got your heart monitor, you got all this. Kind of break down a little bit, what you had in high school, and then ultimately, going from high school to college, you do learn a lot in any sport. But kind of walk us through kind of that process of learning that.
The biggest difference for me is when I went to college is obviously more training, so longer runs, obviously more minutes, more hours throughout the week that you're putting into running more 6 days a week instead of maybe 4 or 5 days in high school. One of the biggest things Coach Ramsey changed with me was my running form, and then he changed the way that I ran. So in high school, I was one of those that go out in front, lead, and if I died off, I died off. he taught me that it's okay to start in the middle of the pack and work your way up. So then I was much more efficient, and I felt much better in the races, to where I wasn't feeling like 5 minutes into the race, like, I was about to, my heart's about to come out of my chest. So learning to just run a different way and race a different way was a huge, huge difference in getting me started on. And although I ran some good times my freshman year, it was my sophomore year when I transferred. He left Fort Scott after a year, so I came back to Iowa and went to a NCAA Division III school, Simpson College, and that was another just great decision I made. Loved my time at Simpson, loved my coaches there, but it was my sophomore year that everything just started to come into place, and that's kind of where I went from a good runner to an All-American runner.
Gotcha. Yeah, it sounds like you kind of bounced around a little bit there, but you're saying that he left ultimately. I mean, you left your buddy behind over there. Did he stay in school?
He stayed another year. Yep.
So you were done chasing rodeo girls, and you were going back to Iowa.
Yep.
That's probably a good decision.
Big rodeo school at Fort Scott. Very big.
So anyways, all right, you get up there, you finish out. So you were All-American your sophomore year, or you finished?
My junior year.
Gotcha.
Yep. I went back to Simpson and ran some really, really good times, but ended up getting injured. And then the next 2 years, I was All-American on the track side at 5,000 meters. I was 8th as a junior. I was 2nd as a senior. And I actually had, when I was injured as a sophomore, I got a 5th year. So I actually came back and ran my 5th year. Had the number 1 time in the nation in 5,000 meters and got hurt right before nationals. So
that'd make me sick.
I've been one of those that when things were going really well, they were great. But I also had to deal with a lot of adversity and injuries and fighting your way back to get back to that level. Because when you're at that level and you have to take, some of my stress fractures, I had to take 3 months off of running. It's like you lose everything.
Stress fractures, like where at your leg?
And my femur.
And
so one of your strongest bones in your body. So
that's probably pretty tough to do. Is that from just like overtraining?
Overtraining, yep. And then just training too hard some days and
wanting it too bad sometimes. Yeah,
exactly.
Did you deal with shin splints a lot?
I really didn't. Every now and then I would get them early on in the season, but they always seem to go away after time. But I do. There's a lot of kids that I deal with, coaching wise, that really struggle with that.
Yeah, I remember when I was in school, there would be kids like in the locker room rolling out like the knots that they have on their shins and just howling the whole time trying to get them. I was like, man,
I've had it done before. It sucks.
It's not.
It's not fun.
No.
And there's no easy way to do it.
No.
You just got to get them out, right?
No. If you talk to any of the kids that have ran for me, they've probably had an ice bath in their time.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of times, I think we kind of averted some of those shin splints by taking some long ice baths after hard workouts, and they didn't like them, but they knew that it benefited them too.
Because I mean, you're doing all this training, but the recovery process is probably just as important as what you're doing going out every day trying to get better. How would you say it's changed since, let's say, you were in high school or you get to college to now, kind of the recovery process and what you can do?
Well, obviously, technology's totally changed. When I first started running, we didn't know what heart monitors were. No one ever used them. In fact, I really didn't start using one religiously until I got out of college, and then kind of connected back with Coach Ramsey, and he said, "Hey, you need to try these heart rate monitors. This is going to keep you healthy, and you're going to run easier on your easier days because you can just look at your watch and see what your heart rate is, and if you just stay under 170." Heart rate, then you're going to be training the aerobic zone, and it's going to be less stress on your body. And I haven't had a stress fracture since.
Wow.
So that can keep you from overtraining then?
Yeah.
Because it's just
as long
because
as
a lot of times if you're not sure what your heart rate is and you're out running, you're going to be probably over that 170, and then you're going to be training an entirely new system in your body. You're going to be training the anaerobic.
Is that number different for everybody?
Everybody's a little bit different, yeah. Yeah, and it goes off of like your age. So, my what it's called anaerobic threshold, my number's obviously way different than a kid that's 15, 16 years old.
So, like an example would be
they would have a faster heart rate, right?
No, not necessarily. There's a specific number in your body where you change over from aerobic conditioning to anaerobic. And, most of my kids in high school are 168 to 174. My anaerobic threshold number is like 155, but that's mainly because I'm over 50 years old. And so that number is a key number for us in training because, 70 to 75% of our conditioning runs need to be under that number. So the old concept in sports where the harder you go, the better you're going to get, that's the opposite in cross-country training.
A lot of science to that now.
You want to be running easier runs for a majority of your runs to train that aerobic zone.
And that makes sense the way that you break that down, because I remember David Goddard, he ran cross country and then he came in and played basketball. And he was in great shape, but the two different conditionings was, I mean, it was rough on all of us. I mean, let's be real, but it's, the short sprints back and forth compared to controlling your heart rate, that does make sense whenever you break it down like that.
You all are still doing some sprints and stuff too, though, right?
Yeah, we still do like short sprints, 30 meters, 50-meter sprints. We kind of build those into our workouts, and kids really like those. I mean, it's short. It's less than 5-6 seconds a lot of times, but it's teaching them to good, proper running form, but also it's building their speed too. So if they're going to another sport, they're going to benefit from doing those types of workouts.
Would you say that running is almost like therapeutic for some people? Like getting out and running, like for you, is it nice to just get out and go for a nice, easy run?
Absolutely. It's time that, obviously I'm not racing, nearly as much as I am. If I run one race a year anymore, that's about all I'm doing. But it's just nice to go out and just get a run in and, release some endorphins in your brain, and it just makes you feel better.
Yeah. It does, honestly. I hadn't, since I was in my early 20s, worked out much, and then recently I started kind of getting back into it, and I almost forgot the little high that it gives you a while right after you get done. When I get done, like I can run through a brick wall, like I feel great.
Now the next day it might be a little rough, but
a little sore.
But it's just
I kind of like that part, even though too, when you're a little bit sore, you're like, hey, I did something. It makes you feel good. If you can
get past the first couple of weeks, generally that soreness goes away. But first time you go out running, if I take all winter off, I go out running. First day I run, my hips and knees are going to be sore the next day. Just the way it is.
And, I've been thinking about going out, I hunt a lot, and I've been thinking about going out west and doing like an elk hunt. And, that's going to be one thing that I'm going to have to get back into doing, is just kind of getting the heart rate up and really focusing on, just keeping my stamina and endurance going, because you're going to be up and down for miles in the mountains. You better be ready to go. Yeah.
What about like for your high school kids? What do you do any kind of nutritional stuff?
We don't tackle too much into the nutrition stuff. I mean, we talk about it a little bit nights before races and things like that, trying to make sure you're eating well and loading up on some carbs that'll help you for those races. But I think that's one area that kids just need to do better at. I mean, not just cross-country kids, all athletes.
Exactly.
I know you guys know Bryce Cox, but I listened to him. He talked to our kids several years ago about nutrition, and he's working with a Division I program. And he left me a folder of a bunch of nutritional things. And if that's one thing I tell athletes, the better you eat, the better it's going to the better athlete you're going to be.
I mean, not even athletes. I mean, just anybody. Yep. If you can kind of try to cut some of the junk out, that, it may be cheaper at Walmart to buy. But, I mean, we see it. There's an obesity problem in America. That's, you can't hide it. But, if you can try to get just half of that crap and maybe buy a little bit more expensive, vegetables or whatever, there's a lot of plans out there that you can try to get on to just.
It's easier right now to find information and figure that stuff out than it's ever been. Everything's right there in your hand, in your phone.
Absolutely.
All you got to do
is not hard to
find nutrition out loud. I guarantee it. All of us on our phones tomorrow.
Our Facebook ads will be
something's going to be
meal plans.
and along with nutrition, the thing that we try to stress with our kids is people don't realize how important hydration is. I mean, being hydrated and properly on a daily basis, a weekly basis, in a cross-country race could mean anywhere from 20 to 35% increase in performance.
Wow.
And people, and when I mean a hydrate, I'm talking like 6 to 8 bottles of water a day or the equivalent of that. And, a lot of kids just aren't getting that at all.
25 to 30%.
Yep.
That's crazy. That's just on water.
Yeah, just on being hydrated.
I want to jump back to, okay, we get out of college. I want to know where Kim comes into this because she's from Curryville. That's a long ways from Iowa and a long ways from Kansas. So where did you run into Kim at?
Let's first see how I got to Bowling Green.
Okay.
I had graduated in May of 1997, and I was working at a running shoe store in Des Moines, and really liked it. And if I got a teaching job, I was going to take it. If not, I was just going to keep working there and just kind of keep running some races. And got to about middle of July, and I was like, well, probably I'd had a couple interviews in Iowa and didn't get anything, and I'd kind of assumed I was just going to be working at the shoe store. And Ken Hufty called me up. I got home from work one day, and he had a message on my answer machine and says, "Hey, this is Ken Hufty," and he got to talking about somebody he knew in Seymour, Iowa, which is a school that we played in baseball, and a former coach from Bowling Green had went to Seymour, and got to talking about being a track coach. This is all on the answer machine stuff, and so I was like, "Man, this guy sounds cool." I was like, "I'm gonna give him a call back," and so gave him a call and got up there a couple of days later for an interview, and I'd never heard of Bowling Green. I was from a small town in Iowa, and so my grandma decided, she's like, "Oh, I'm not gonna let you drive up there by yourself. I'll ride with you." So she rode with me, and we pull in the parking lot. I said, "Grandma, this will probably take about an hour." We were in there like 3 hours. And it was the neatest interview. I mean, we spent more time talking about life and about where you've been, talking about track, and then maybe the last 30, 40 minutes was the actual interview questions for the job. And so I left there. I had a really good feeling that that this might be a good spot for me. I'd been praying that that the Lord would put me in a spot that He knew I could be successful, and I was willing to go anywhere. I mean, I was sending out a lot of resumes to different places and looking in the Des Moines Register for teaching openings, and saw one from Bowling Green and just said, I'll put my resume in the mail and send it off. And next thing you know, called up and got the job. And so when I came and interviewed, and when he got to the point of offering me the job, he says, "I don't have cross country for you, but I do have assistant football and ninth grade boys basketball and head middle school track." And I said, and at that time, I thought I wanted to be a head basketball coach at some point too. I played 4 years. I was an all-conference player my senior year, and I'd actually, when I was student teaching, coached a freshman team and really enjoyed it. So I was like, yeah, I'll take that job. And when I was working with assistant middle school football, Scott Mullins was the head middle school football coach. So we had a lot of fun together. We would scout on Friday nights, and I learned a lot about football. I mean, I've always been the biggest football fan when it comes to college and pro, but only played 1 year. I played my sophomore year in high school, but never knew really much about the coaching side of it. But I just loved to play it. Loved to play Madden, and loved to play college football in college on that was Sega back then.
Yeah, honestly, I think a lot of people
before your time, Corey.
I think a lot of people learn like defensive coverages and offensive formations from Madden. I think it's probably been one of the most learning, like you learn from it the most out of any video game.
So I got the job and came down and I met Kim through basketball. Her sister Jill was a senior, so we had a lot of games together. A lot of the varsity games were varsity boy girls. So I was going to these games, and then a lot of the kids, Jill was dating another player on the team, and he was always giving me crap about, "I'm going to find you a girlfriend," this and that. His name was Colin Grody. So anyway, he said, "Hey, I got, all you got to do is call her and she'll go on a date with you." I was like, are you sure? I'm not calling. I don't want to call and get rejected. And he said, nope, I already got it set up. All you got to do is call. So called up Kim, and we went on a date, and then we've been together ever since.
The rest is history.
Yep.
Yeah, it's crazy because I could see some friends like pranking me over something like that. Like you call her up, you call somebody up, and they're like, "Who are you? Why are you calling me?"
Yeah, they like to heckle me a lot, because I was only a few years older than them at the time, but I had a lot of fun with that group. I don't know, the Kazers. They were seniors that year, and
They were a handful, I'm sure.
I love those guys.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, so it's crazy that, everything just kind of lined up perfect where, you're all the way up in Des Moines at the time, and Kent Hufty, who I think we all probably know, calls you, and, it just kind of all worked out, and you've been here since 97.
It was the perfect position for me to go to, and a lot of people don't realize, I've told people, I could have looked around at other jobs in my time here, but I've never wanted to because I've always enjoyed the people I work with. And that I don't think people realize, it's not all about the money all the time. It's about, it's about the people you work with. And I've just had some great people to work with at Bowling Green.
Yeah, and that was going to be one of the questions that I asked you, with your resume. I mean, we read it off at the beginning. With your resume, I would think you could go a lot of different places if you really wanted to. But that was going to be one of my questions, why have you stayed in Bowling Green for so long? But, if you like the people you work with and you don't feel like it's work, then...
Yeah. Well, and my parents, they grew up, and I saw a lot of loyalty out of them in their jobs. And my dad worked at John Deere in Ottumwa and retired there. My mom worked a long time at 3M factory in Knoxville. And I just, I just always saw loyalty out of them in their jobs. And so I never wanted to be one that hopped around from job to job. It was important for me to whenever I did get my own program in track and cross country, that I wanted to do something with it. I wanted it to be respected throughout the state. That was one thing, a lot of people when I first came to Bowling Green, they didn't know the difference between track and cross country. They like, if we were in cross country this season, they would say, "Hey, how's track going?"
Yeah.
So I wanted to change that, and the only way to change that is you've got to get good kids to come out and run for you and get excited behind it and start having some success.
When you're doing what you love, it's not. It turns from into a job into something different.
Absolutely,
it makes you want to go to work the next day.
Yeah, yep. I've told a lot of people. I just finished my 27th year at Bowling Green, and I can count on one hand how many times I've woke up in the morning and didn't want to go to school. And most of those days were when I was assistant principal. so you see why I kind of made the move back to AD. So
how long were you at Bowling Green before you got the AD job?
So I started out, I was a teacher for 2 years, and then I didn't list this in there, but I actually left Bowling Green in 2000, and I got one of my dream jobs was to be a college cross country coach, and I got the opportunity to go to Missouri Valley College in Marshall. And they offered me the head cross country and assistant track position, and and they paid for my master's, and they gave me a place to stay and everything. And I was early enough in my career that I was still I wanted to take that opportunity because I knew if I didn't take it, I may never get that opportunity again. So I did that for 1 year and pretty much had all my master's done except 1 or 2 classes. And Ken Hufty called me, and I was dating Kim at the time, and she had just gotten a job at Frankfurt, and Ken says, "Hey, I think I've got a job for you. You want to come back and talk to me about it?" I had no idea what he was talking about. He said, "I'm going to keep you busy, though." So he had a head track, head cross country, and then AD. So back in 2000, when I took that, it was a halftime AD, and so I was still teaching halftime and doing AD halftime, and then coaching. Really, really busy.
I bet.
And then 4 years later, I got the opportunity to go to be assistant principal. And
who was the principal at that time?
The principal was Ken Hufty.
Kent.
Yep. So Kent was kind of my supervisor when I was AD, and then when I went to assistant principal, he was my right hand, and he was basically my boss. And I loved working for Kent. I mean, he's to this day is a big supporter of me, but also he was a great mentor to me growing up. And, sometimes you got to have people looking after you. And
That's very important.
He was always like, if it was a sticky situation in the AD part of it or the assistant principal side of it, he's like, let me take this one. Let me, he always said, get the egg on his face. But he was doing that to protect you. And I think he knew the longer I was here, the more people I would get to know and that I could handle myself at some point. And, he retired, I think, in 08 or 09, somewhere in there. And it's hard to believe he's been gone that long, but I still keep in touch with him. But I've also used that in some of the coaches that I've hired, some of the principals that have been hired that may not have a ton of experience, but need somebody to say, hey, tell me what to do. What have we done in the past if this has happened? And I've got that knowledge of being around a lot of different principals and superintendents. And
Yeah, because Kent didn't go very far away.
No, not at all.
He's just a little further.
No,
I guess that'd
no.
be south right now.
Yep.
He's still at it, right?
Yep,
He's
still is.
coaching
Yep,
down there.
won another district title this year. He's
I've seen that.
had a great run.
Another district title down there. And one of my questions for you would be, Bowling Green's a small town. I mean, it's probably about 3,000 people. Yeah, we pull from Curryville and Frankfurt, but
I mean, 4,200, I think is what it is.
let's say around 4,000 people. And you've got, I'd say on average, you probably got 80 kids in each class coming through high school, 80 to 100. There's some outliers there. Why do you think track and cross country has had such success? Because 67, cross country and track conference championships, that's over 30 years of dominating the area in what you're coaching. How do you get kids to really buy in to, you've created like a pipeline of just a bunch of success here. How do you get kids to buy in and, how do you lay I guess the groundwork for it?
We had talked about this before when we were kind of preparing, a little bit for this. And Bowling Green, it's not like we have some kind of special genetics here going on for runners. It's not any different than any other area. So it comes down to one thing, and that's training and coaching. So
there's kids that have ran that you're like, you're really going out and running and had really good success.
Yes.
And it's like, holy cow.
That's a great question. I think a lot of it is you've got to get the right kids. And I will tell you, cross country is the absolute hardest sport to recruit because you're trying to recruit a kid that you're telling them, hey, we're going to run 5 or 6 days a week and probably anywhere from 5 to 6 miles a day. That doesn't excite a whole lot of kids anymore. Yeah. But I was my early years was able to get just some really good kids, and they all got along great. They all trained together. A big part of our success is our summer training. We get a really good jump start on our season by getting our kids to run in the summer so that when the season does start, we can ramp up the workouts. But staying on top is extremely hard. I don't think people realize that.
I guarantee it's not.
It's hard. And a lot of recruiting. I'm walking the halls all the time and I'm going through PE classes and I'm like, yeah, that kid looks like he's got a good running stride. Or when they go out to the track and run a few laps in PE class, I'm scouting it out.
Do you work with the middle school and elementary PE coaches? Hey, this kid's probably going to be a good runner, and you
a lot with the middle school.
You have them on your radar.
I'm asking Coach Dotson and Coach Servine right now, but I'm saying, hey, do you got some kids that have ran well in the pacer test? Have you got kids that go out in the track and they run and they look effortless and they're not playing football or playing another fall sport? You're just always looking for kids. And I've been rejected many times, heck no, I'm not doing cross country, but that's just part of it. If you've just got to keep selling your program, and we try to do that as best we can.
And what helps you is you have so much success that, a lot of kids, if they're not doing anything and they have you or somebody come approach them, it's like, well, yeah, maybe I think I do want to be a part of that.
That's what it is at Bowling Green, I feel like, is it's the success that the program has had. You've built this culture that kids want to be involved in it. I know even my son's age, probably the 4 best athletes in the class is, I think, all going to run cross country this year for middle school.
Brock's
So
probably
it's
got a
like
little pool with that group there. So he starts with the son. Yeah, get them running.
he's
Brock wants to make sure he has a good team when he's in high school.
so they're
He's all in on having a good team.
the athletes. I think they do run cross country in Bowling Green. That's why you've had such success for so long. It's not like it's been for a 5-year stretch. This has been a long stretch here where you've had success, and it's all about culture.
And I've always looked at, like college programs as, you might see a team that does really well one year, but then 3 or 4 years later, they're just, you don't even hear of them. So I always wanted to be where, we were at least in conversation for a conference district title every year. And, like I said, it's a lot of work. It's constant trying to get kids to come out. I have a lot of conversations with kids and just say, hey, I think you could be successful. And, you just keep throwing that in their head that, hey, I'll give it a try. Sometimes I tell people, come out for 2 weeks, give it a try. If you don't like it after 2 weeks, I'm totally fine if you want to. Very few kids have ever quit though once they started. But it's changed a lot since COVID. I mean, a lot of kids, we've struggled to get our numbers up to where we were before COVID. Our football teams had great success, so their numbers have kind of jumped. Mm-hmm. And we've probably lost a few of those kids over the years, but it's just constant trying to get the kids that you feel like you need to be able to produce a solid team.
Do you like, not to put you on the spot here, but do you like cross country season or track season better?
I like both seasons. I would say I'm probably less stressed maybe on the cross country season because tracks, there's 19 events, and a lot of our coaches are in charge of different events. So
and a lot more kids.
I've got it. Yeah. I think we had almost 70 boys and girls this year in track this year.
Wow.
Dang.
Woo.
Would you say that's about average, or is
that was a big year? We
year?
had record numbers in boys track this year, but our girls numbers were way down this year for some reason. But cross country, you're generally dealing with, on average, 10 to 15 boys and around 10 girls every year. But I would say if you put me on the spot and I had to pick one, I'd pick, I like cross country season a little bit better. You get better weather, and that's a big thing for me. I love the warm weather, but I also like the cool weather with no wind. Track season, you'll see me in a hat, gloves, long sleeves every meet until about May, and that's not a lot of fun sometimes. So,
yeah, not to put you on the spot with that one. I knew you were going to say, "Well, I love both of them," but.
Have you noticed, is there a certain build that you look for in an athlete for cross country that has more success than a different one?
Well, I mean, the tall, skinny, that's what everybody kind of says. That's what you're looking for. But I mean, we've had kids that are short. We've had kids that are tall. More than anything, I just want them. I just feel like kids need to be involved in things, and I just want them to be a part of something. That they come to. There's structure to our program. There's discipline. There's hard work, but there's also a lot of praise and confidence building from our program. And I just think any kids would be successful just giving it a try and giving it their best. The human body can be pushed a lot harder than people think it can. Oh. And I think cross country,
for sure.
I think cross country really brings that out, and track too.
Yeah, when you very first start into track or cross country in school, those first couple of weeks you kind of learn that your body can do more than what you think, because they will push you past what you want to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then whenever you get further down in life and you look back at all the times that you've ran, I know especially like in basketball for me, like the sweep the floor suicides and all that good stuff, you're like, man, I'm really glad I did it when I was there, but I'm glad I don't have to do it right now.
Yeah, I'd die. There's no way I could do it.
Yep. But, all right, so we're going to kind of move on here. So when you get to Bowling Green and, you kind of have the stint where you leave and then you come back, what year did you actually take over the track and cross-country program?
So 1999, I was both head boys track and
in high school.
Yep.
Okay.
And head cross country. then I left to go to Missouri Valley, and I came back. I was head cross country, and I think the first year or two I was assistant boys track, and then I took over the head job for a few years. Then I went to assistant principal. But while I was assistant principal, I did stay coaching cross country, but I gave up track. Blake Skillman took over for a few years. And then when he retired and I went back to full-time AD in 2004, then I took back head track. So then I took boys and girls track at that point, but I'd always stayed as cross country.
So when the reason I asked that, I think we kind of touched on that, but to like lead up to this, when do you feel like Bowling Green really kind of as a school turned around and you kind of started that culture? About what year do you think that really kind of switched?
We'd always had good track programs under Ken Hufty. I mean, Ken Hufty to this day, I feel like was one of the best track coaches that I've ever been around. I mean, he handed me booklets of different field events and workouts when I took over, and he says, you can do whatever you want with this, look it over, or you can throw it away or whatever. But I still have a lot of those things. But our track program had some success well before I took over. Cross country had some conference championships with Steve Hunter taking over, and they were always Class 3, and then we kind of dropped to Class 2 for a few years, and that kind of started us getting some really good success. And now we jumped back up to Class 3 in cross country. But our track program has been very solid for many, many years. So I remember when I took over track, I remember one thing that has always stuck with me. And you know how some things just stick with you. But when he gave me the head track position, he said, now the expectation is that you will be right there contending or winning the conference meet every year. And that's just always something.
You've done a pretty good job of that.
That's a lot of people don't know that story, but whenever we're setting our conference track meet up with our coaches, and we're trying to score every point we can because we want to win that conference track meet.
And you want to dominate too.
Yeah.
So on that the state championship team you had a couple years ago in track, what do you feel like separated that team from other teams that you've coached, not just talent wise, but what else did they have that maybe some other teams didn't?
First off, that team was unbelievable. I mean, we went into that season, we thought we would be pretty good, and if we had some kids that were talking about not coming out, that ended up being state champions. But we recruited, and we called them in, talked to them, and got them to come out. And we didn't lose a meet that year like that we tried to win. There was one meet it was right before conference, and we just put kids in like one event, so I think we got second. But every meet we tried to win, we won that year. And our kids, throughout the entire season, we just let them compete. We tried different events. We didn't try to overload them. But we knew we had a pretty good thing going. But those kids didn't know like they were ranked number one all year until after sectionals. Because our thoughts as coaches was, let's don't even talk about a state championship or anything, because we got to get them out of the sectional meet. We can go to sectionals. If these kids don't qualify, you can't score points at state meet.
Exactly.
And so we went to sectionals, and and we just had an incredible sectional meet. Everybody that we got out, that we wanted to get out to the state meet, we got out, which has never happened in my time. And so we went to state, and that week of state was the first time I said, okay, guys, if we just go do what we've been doing, I think we win the state meet. And we went and just had an unbelievable state meet. Several state champions, several all-state performances, and won the state meet. We doubled up second place team to win our first state championship in track. And that was just one of the most incredible weekends I've ever had as a coach. And just our kids just performed at an elite level. And it was just one of those times, you're not going to have a team like that, ever again, probably. It was just unbelievable.
Well, and then once you go through something like that, then you also have a connection with those kids forever.
Exactly.
That's never going away.
Yep.
And there was, I remember, because that was 2023, wasn't there like several meets in a row where like PRs and school records were getting broke like each each meet?
We had, we had school records being broken, that were 30 and 40 years old. I mean, it was just unbelievable. And then you had Marcus Starks, who was at the time, I think by the end of his senior year, I think he was one of the top 10 in the nation in the high jump. He was a centimeter away from clearing 7 foot, which is incredible. He obviously won state. Dylan Dalton was breaking his own javelin record several times that year. He was a state champion. Devin Rue was a state champion in the discus. Blaine Bryant in the long and triple jump was breaking long-standing school records.
Fly.
Ben Chance broke the mile and 2 mile. Those were over 30 years old. And then our 4x1 broke a school record and was on the all-state list at the state championships.
What was Ben's mile time?
He ran 4:21 as a junior. That's the school record. So
What do you consider a pretty good mile time?
the first 15 years I was coaching, I mean, if you was under 4:35, I thought that was a pretty good mile. Now, I mean, this year I was watching the state meet this year, and I think Class 3. If you weren't under 4:21, I don't even think you were in the top 8 this year.
Really?
Yeah, it's incredible what kids are running now, and it's.
What's Ben running now in college?
I think if he didn't have a senior year, I think he was set up to run 4:10 to 4:12 his senior year. He was coming off of winning state cross country, and then he had the injury and didn't compete hardly at all his senior year. But I felt like he could have ran 4:10, 4:12 as a senior, and he's more of in college. He's more of the 5K, 10K. He'll run some 1500s, but I think he doesn't have the foot speed, I think, to be like a 4-minute miler. But I do think he could go under 4:10 in college for sure.
That's fast.
Which is incredibly fast.
That high school record might be in trouble though here in about 5-6 years, because you got another one coming along that's pretty impressive.
Brock's main goals in life are to get Ben's record. So.
Yeah, he was over at the house the other night. He stayed and we were talking about track and stuff. And he's going into 7th grade. They're somewhere between 6th and 7th grade, and he said he ran like a 5:08.
5:08 mile.
That's before even
That's
7th
faster
grade.
than
That
I've
is,
ever
and
run.
I've never ran anything even close to that. That is awesome.
And he's such a little squirt out there too. Like I keep waiting to, like Ben really grew his 8th grade year.
Yeah.
And I think Brock's when he does grow and get, I think his stride's going to be much better. I think.
But he's got the fast feet part.
Yeah.
Because our boys play basketball together and stuff too, and he makes everybody else look like they're playing in slow motion.
Yeah.
He's just so fast.
Yeah.
Matt, what's your take on kids growing up playing sports? Do you think the more sports the better, or do you think it's nice to let's maybe focus on a couple here, or do you think there's a big wave right now of kids just only wanting to focus and play one sport?
And I don't like that.
I think it's a detriment. I think it's going to burn them out, and then it's going to they're either going to go try to find another sport to play, or they're just not going to play.
Yeah.
So
I'm friends with a lot of college coaches, and I ask that question a lot to those guys, and they will flat tell you they want them playing multiple sports.
because
All the way through high school, or
the way I kind of see it, each sport you have different mobility
Exactly.
that you're working on.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think it helps from burnout standpoint too. I look at my own son Ben. He played basketball up until his end of his freshman year, and then he didn't play anymore, and he just started training more during. And I always thought it's nice to go do something else. His last 2 or 3 years of high school, he was pretty much running year round with 2 or 3 weeks off here and there throughout the year, and that's a lot. That's a lot of stress on your body, and I would have liked to have kept him playing basketball just to do something else and take a break from running.
yeah.
And that's why I'm really encouraging my youngest to stick with it. And he likes basketball, but Ben liked basketball in youth and middle school too. And then after his freshman year, decided he was just going to train. And it helped him too. He was a state champion, and a lot of that was from some of the training he did throughout running year round. But
So as a parent, when Ben comes to you and says, I don't really think I'm going to go out for basketball my sophomore year, as a parent, how do you react to that? Kind of what's your...
I think you get to a point in high school where it's the kids. This isn't about me. Obviously I would have wanted him to stay in it, but when after his freshman year, he actually, going into his sophomore year, he came to all the summer stuff. And he ran cross country, and he got 9th at state and got all state and really had a huge breakthrough year. And basketball started up like the next day. Like he runs state and basketball's starting up the next day. And I think he needed just a break from competing. And obviously I was like, hey, you're to the point now where you can make those decisions. I don't want you to play just because I want you to play, because I think in my experiences with parents that have made kids play, I just don't think the kids are ever all in. Mm-hmm. And, if Ben's going to do something, he's going to do it. He's going to be all in if he's going to do it. And if he was having that hesitation, and I think he was seeing that a lot of the people that were beating him were doing the year-round training and training. And so he's like, if I'm going to ever catch him, I need to be doing it too.
Yeah.
So I knew he wasn't going to be sitting around not doing anything. So I knew there was going to be benefit down the road, mm-hmm. but there's also the burnout factors and things like that can happen when you're only doing running or whatever sport you're doing.
What would be, and we'll go now to the other end of that spectrum, what would be, if you're a parent out right now and, let's say your kids aren't really interested in going out for sports, but you'd like to try to get them out to be sociable, be with their friends. What would be, I guess, a way that you would maybe try to approach that situation? Because there could be a parent out there right now where the kid, they may not want to, or they may, what would be a good approach to try to get a kid to go out?
I've made a lot of phone calls with parents and just said, hey, we'd like this kid to give it a try, come out. And I think he's going to learn life lessons, obviously, but he's going to be around kids. He's going to learn, he's going to be social. I think kids need those things. Mm-hmm. Too many kids are on their phones 20 hours a day or on, YouTube or whatever. And, even if it's only practice as an hour or two, that's an hour or two where their phone's not in their hands and they're getting life lessons. They're getting in shape.
Keeping their body healthy.
Exactly. Yeah. I just think there's just, even whatever sport it is, I just think there's just so many things that are positive for being involved in athletics.
One thing I've always wondered, you being the athletic director, you're coaching 2 different programs here, because I see, cross-country track, 2 different programs. How do you keep and maintain a good work-life balance? Is Kim just a rock star and, she's just like, what, I know what you're doing, you do you, or, and plus you have 2 kids, one in college now, so I'm sure you probably like to try to go down and see him. Mm-hmm. You got one coming up here. How do you try to maintain a good, work-life balance?
That's a great question. And, I've always been one, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it the best that I can. It doesn't matter if I'm golfing or if I'm going to do something, I always want to do it the best that I can do. But I think my first maybe 8 to 10 years, Kim knew there was a lot. And some of that time was we were having kids, and she was having to be there a lot of times because I'd have to supervise or this or that. And it was a lot on her. She was lucky enough to have family close by and could, go down there and just kind of hand the baby off to grandma or somebody for a while and just, but it is a lot. Being athletic director, in the fall, I'm 3 or 4 nights out a week supervising plus coaching. So it's a lot.
Yeah.
But I think the work balance and things like that, I've given a lot to the school and a lot of time and effort. But it's been very rewarding too for me. I love seeing kids have success.
Your impact on the community has been huge, and you may not even realize it, but like everybody talks about, we don't know what we would do if we didn't have Matt Chance, around. Everybody respects you so much. We talk about this all the time, but for me, it's just like, you give so much to a school and to programs, how do you keep it, still positive on the back end, still making time for the family?
Yeah, and I will say that the administrators I've worked with have been like, if I've been out, let's say 2 nights in a row, and I just need to be home tonight, they've always been like, yeah, you take tonight off, I'll take tonight. We work really well together. We try not to overload anybody, and try not to have anybody out like 3 or 4 nights in a row. Obviously, it's part of my job. I understand that's, when I signed up for the job, I knew it was going to be some supervision. But, now that my kids are old enough, Brock will go to a game with me here or there. I just try to, when it is family time, I want to be home and
zoned in.
But I'm also one of those people that I'm just not one to sit around and watch TV. Sports, yes, but like if I wake up in the morning and I've been sitting around for an hour and there's nothing on TV, I got to go do something. I'll go for a run, or I'll go in and work for an hour. And Kim's totally fine with that. She's watching her own shows and this and that. But yeah, I'm just very active, and I cannot stand just sitting around not doing anything.
Yeah, I hate sitting idle. I'm going to be doing something.
That's the worst part about my job, is just sitting there the whole time. Gosh, it's nice to get out and do some other stuff, whether it's looking at a house or whatever. But yeah, the stagnant part it's really hard to do. And as an AD, yeah, you got office work, but you can also kind of get up and go around and see what's going on and all that stuff too.
You're always checking fields to see if what needs fixed, and it's a full-time job, no doubt about it. But I also have some good people that, our maintenance people are awesome. Like if I say, hey, our scoreboard's not working, they're on it. They're up there in 5 minutes getting stuff done. Eric St. Clair is great. Chance Buchanan's great. Robin Chapman's he lines our fields and stuff. He's great. So it like I said, back to, if you work with really good people, it just makes the job so much better.
How many coaches do you have underneath you through the whole Bowling Green school system?
Generally, on a year, we've got about 30 to 35 coaches that I'm in charge of.
That's more than I thought it would be, honestly.
Yeah, 30 to 35 at Bowling Green.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Some of them coach one sport, some of them coach multiple sports.
How has it changed, especially as of late, trying to find coaches?
It's tough. It's much different than it was, again, 10, 15 years ago. But I think a lot of that is, you try to get all of your coaches through your teaching staff first. And Bowling Green's not the only school right now, but when we have openings, we're getting 1 or 2 or sometimes 0 applicants. You're just not getting the applicants. So say you have a head basketball, head football, or whatever, and you put out a social studies job / head football, you might have 1 person apply or 2, you know.
Do you think it comes down to like the pay the teachers get?
Pay doesn't help, but I think people that go into education know that you're not going to get paid great. Our coaching stipends are actually very competitive with the schools around us, and we've done a great job over the years to make that. We're people that are teaching do want to coach a little bit, but coaching's tough too. There's nothing easy about coaching.
I got to be a part of it one year.
Yeah, yep.
We had kind of had a talk similar to this before, and I was laying there last night, couldn't sleep, and I was thinking about this, so I got to looking some stuff up. And it says that there are around 1.1 million doctors in the United States and around 4 million teachers. So there's about 4 times as many teachers as doctors. The average doctor makes about $400,000 a year. The average teacher makes about $50,000 a year, which is 8 times less. Teachers earn about 24% less than other college-educated workers with a similar experience and education level. That number was about 5% in the 90s, so it's grown by quite a bit. And according to the National Education Association, 55% of U.S. teachers said they were considering maybe leaving teaching in the next 2 years. How do we fix that problem? as a society, because it is a huge problem. I think in my opinion, it's one of the biggest problems that the United States has. Because if you don't have your teachers, if you don't have good quality teachers and they're teaching your next generation, what does that do to your next generation?
Not going to be good.
So, like, what do we need to do as a society, as a country, to change that? How can the government step in?
Yeah. Obviously, I think pay some of it. I mean, when people coming out of college, say you go to a university and you've got $60,000 or $70,000 in debt just to get a teaching degree, and you're coming out and you're making $35,000 or $40,000, and your first payment comes in to pay back your college loans. Yeah, you're not going to stay in education very long, or you're going to find 2 or 3 other jobs along with the teaching job.
And that could be one of those great teachers.
Yeah.
You just can't. It's not affordable
Yep.
to be a teacher
Yep.
unless you have a partner
Yep.
that makes significantly more and you just love to teach. But I mean, financially, it's just straining.
Yeah,
Well,
and that's got to come. The governor. It's got to start there. We're trying to get our base salary to $40,000, but that's still not enough. I mean, I know Iowa's done some great things. I think they're well above that.
I think Missouri is one of the lowest
One of
actually in the
lowest,
United
if
States.
not the lowest.
And it's not just that you all are struggling trying to find teachers to fill the spots, but with the lower pay, as that percentage gets worse, you're getting lower quality of teachers.
Yeah, I mean, when I took the job at Bowling Green, there was probably 20 to 25 other people that applied for that same job.
Wow.
And over my time at Bowling Green, some of the teaching positions we've had, I mean, even some of our elementary positions, we used to have a ton of applicants for those. And even those in the last, since COVID, have really very low applicants for any position we're having right now. And that's a major problem because, you get to the point where you can't hire a full-time, we're hiring a lot of retired teachers, but those aren't long-term solutions. They might fill in for a year or two, but they want to be retired too.
Yeah.
That's why they taught so many years.
I don't want to get too political here, but I got to get a little political. We're wasting all this money that we have, that everybody knows, on all this stuff that we don't need to be doing. Why can't we change some stuff around with Doge or whatever they figure out to get some more money funneled into the education system? That should be a simple fix, right? I mean, why is this a difficult thing?
And is the education, I don't really know, is it each state that has, each state has individual education systems, and they determine kind of where you're at, what you can pay, and all that.
Yeah, and how much they're going to allocate to education.
So you get a budget every year for how much you get to pay your teachers. That's budgeted from the government, I guess.
That's your base salary, right?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. And then, in theory, a tenured teacher should make more. I have a friend, they're from Illinois, and he was saying that his wife she's still teaching. She's taught for 7 years, and I guess the state moved like the base salary. Mm-hmm. So she had just got to the point where they moved the base salary, and new people were coming in and making the same amount of money as her, like, even though she's been there for 7 years.
Yeah.
I thought that was bizarre. I was like, there's just no way, but
I know if you can't
if the funding isn't there, then what do you do?
Yeah, if you can't pay your teachers more, if the money's not there, you can't pay them. So you got to figure out other ways to do it, as far as like maybe benefit wise, or I know. How do you think that Bowling Green is ever going to go to a 4-day-a-week school week?
They've had some discussions about it. It's been several years ago, and there just wasn't a whole lot of movement from the Board of Education at the time to do that. I don't know. There's a lot. I think we're one of only 2 schools in our conference that are 5-day weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Us and Wright City. Everybody else has switched to the 4-day.
I've always wondered if that would help maybe bring some more teachers in.
I've talked to our superintendent about it. I've talked to our principals about it, that, the people that you talk to at the 4-day weeks, they're never going back to a 5-day week.
Yeah.
So when you kind of take those people and slam the door that they're never going to apply for a job, you're probably getting less applicants from the schools around us that may say, yeah, I'd go to Bowling Green if they were a 4-day week.
Have you looked into, is there any difference as far as like test scores, that kind of thing, as far as intelligence level compared from a 4-day to a 5-day?
I know there's people that have done those studies. I have not done much with that at all, and seen much.
I don't know if there is any difference or if there isn't. I mean, if there isn't, then there's not really.
I mean, heck, we got AI teaching classes right now. ChatGPT's teaching classes, not in Bowling Green, but in some schools, and it's raising kids' test scores.
Said the kids outperformed the kids that were taught by regular teachers by 99%. Like,
wow,
99%.
Before too long, you may not have any teachers at the school. It may just all be AI. What a time to be alive. It's getting pretty crazy out here with that stuff.
It is.
No, you got to have that. There's only so much that a book or a computer can teach you about life. You learn so much more from your teachers than just what they're teaching you in that textbook, or what their curriculum is. You learn all kinds of life lessons: how to be an adult, how to manage your time,
Absolutely.
how to have discipline. That stuff is just as important.
What would you say your favorite part is about coaching, and maybe kind of jump back to why you felt like a calling to coaching in the first place?
I get excited about when kids exceed their expectations. When I first came into coaching at Bowling Green, they didn't have goals of winning a district or going to state as a team. It was like, we want to do well at conference, but we figure that's probably that's as good as we can do. And so when I came in, I was like, hey, let's raise the goals a little bit. Let's try to maybe qualify a team to state. And so now, we've gotten to the point where we've taken so many to state. I mean, our goals are pretty simple every year. We want to win the conference, we want to win the district, and we want to qualify a team. And that really hasn't changed the last 20 years. And, and that's the kids know that's the expectation. I always think that kids set goals too small, and that's where I come in and I say, okay, here's your goals. Here's where I think we can get, and I want us to think this high. I want us to think big, and not just take the easy way and try to hit every goal just because we set them so low.
A lot more people need that too, because they do set a goal, but there could be if somebody would just come into their life and be like, you could actually get here and actually push somebody and be there and support them to get there.
Yeah. So,
gosh, the world would be a lot better place.
So
sometimes
I get
the
excited.
kids sometimes they just need that nudge.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I do. I still get excited about kids that have success and they didn't think that, and they achieve things that they didn't think they could. I get a lot of excitement out of that.
That's
if
awesome.
you've ever watched me coach, or been to a cross country meet, I'm out there and
We know you're into it.
I'm into it. I'm pretty tired at the end of the day because they run 3 miles, but I've got 3 different races where I'm running about 2 miles a race to try to watch them. So I'm pretty exhausted afterward. What was the second part of that question?
I believe it was just why you felt the calling to coaching, but you kind of answered it.
Yeah, I had great coaches growing up. I mean, I think that helps you get into it when you have people that you really respect. And my high school track coach was my social studies teacher, and he kind of got me into running. I owe him a lot to this day. If he wouldn't, and basically it was, he saw me in the hallway one day and said, "Hey, Chance, I really could see you out there running the 400 or 800 for us in track." Shoot, I was out the next day. I was like, hey, I got somebody who thinks I might be good at something, And, I started out and, I wasn't very good, but there was always a competitive drive in me to be good. And I think you see that in a lot of our kids. I want them to have that drive. I want them to be successful, and I want them to care. If they don't run well, I want them to be disappointed, but let's get back after the practice next week and forget about it and move on.
So we know Matt Chance, the athletic director, coach. What do you, whenever you're not doing that, what are some of your things that you like to do?
I love to golf. Love to go to sporting events. I'm a big Iowa Hawkeye fan, big Pittsburgh Steeler fan, Cardinal fan. Like to go we try to go to a Hawkeye basketball game and football game every year.
How crazy was it? I went to Hannibal LaGrange and played baseball.
I
for
know
a
what
year,
you're gonna say.
And we got on a bus. So like their funding, like for the baseball program, was we had to go up and we're pretty much like security people at the University of Iowa, their football stadium. And I'm sitting there kind of manning my post, and all of a sudden,
Corey, the security guard.
I had a vest on and everything.
Did you have a whistle?
The funny part about that is Ben was a big fan of you. Like, he was playing basketball at the time, and you gave him some lessons a couple times, and Ben was a big fan of you. So I got a picture of my phone of you guys at that.
I was sitting out there like in the middle of the parking lot. We weren't allowed to have any like tailgate food or anything. We just had to stand there, and they would bring water to us occasionally. And all of a sudden, I see Matt and Ben come walking up. It's like, what are you doing here? Oh, well, I'm earning my keep here, I guess. But that was, I forget, I think that might have been 2017. And Iowa had a really good football team that year. They were ranked, I think, top 15 at that time. And
they did have a good year that year.
We were able to kind of sneak in at the very top and watched a little bit at the end. But, I do not miss going and doing that.
Yeah.
And this big Caitlin Clark craze this went
I'm
through
a huge Caitlin Clark fan.
last few years. Like,
Did you ever go up and watch?
We did. Actually, there was an AD in Clark County, Jason Church at the time, and he knew I was a big Hawkeye fan, and him and I had talked for years and years, and he got season tickets when they got good her junior year, and knowing that, hey, I can probably sell these if nothing else, but he ended up going to a lot of them, but he gifted me 4 tickets because he said, hey, Matt, you've helped me over the years with AD stuff, and here I'm going to give you 4 tickets. I'm like, I'll take them.
We're going to that.
So I took Brock, and we had a blast. I think she had like 35 points that night, and just packed house. It was just
how crazy is it that one person can just turn around a whole women's basketball program, not program, but the whole women's NCAA, and then now the WNBA, just one person.
Yeah.
nobody has ever played like she plays. She's different than any other girls basketball player that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
The shots she takes are insane, and she makes them at a high level.
Yeah.
And it did kind of spark up, when they had their clash with LSU, her and Angel Reese and all this stuff. I didn't watch girls basketball prior to that. I'm going to be completely honest. I didn't watch it at all. I had watched a few Mizzou girls games whenever I was going to school over there, but that really got everything interesting, and it hasn't slowed down. And I don't want to get into all the stuff, but when you have somebody like that comes in and kind of transcends and lifts the game, it just seems like there's so many different sources in the WNBA that's just trying to prevent her from helping the WNBA.
Yeah.
It makes
I
no
don't
sense.
understand it. It's she just brought you millions, maybe billions of dollars, and you're just keep kicking her down.
If you want to know my take on it, just watch what Charles Barkley has to say. He's one of my favorite people to listen to because he just tells you he sees it, and half the time I agree with him. It's just
I didn't miss. We watched every Caitlin Clark game, probably her junior and senior year, and we've, Brock and I we watched almost all of her Fever games, and since she's been out for 2 weeks, we haven't even turned them on. we look at see if they win or not at the end of the night, but I have no desire to watch the Indiana Fever if she's not there.
Yeah, and now that they got Sophie Cunningham, which she's from Columbia.
Yep.
She was
that was a good pickup for them.
Yeah, she was my age. She played at Rockbridge.
That was a good pickup for Indiana.
But all right, well, I think we're going to take a quick break and we'll come back. We got a few more things we're going to talk about. I'm going to check on the battery of the camera here, and then we'll jump right back into it. All right, we're back. So we're going to jump back into the whole Iowa Hawkeye fan here. So growing up, was your family just a Hawkeye fan?
Yep. We everybody in my family was huge Hawkeye fans.
Because there's not really there's not a whole lot to do up in Iowa, right?
There's a little bit to do, but there's no major sporting teams. But everybody kind of gets behind Iowa or Iowa State is generally what people, and a little bit of Drake Bulldog fans.
Is the Iowa and Iowa State rivalry, like, is that pretty big up there?
Huge. Yep.
Because, like, Missouri and Missouri State, there's not really much.
Nothing.
Iowa State is a big rivalry.
But Iowa State's also got a really good, sports.
It's got to be competitive for it to be a rivalry.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But anyway, I want to get back to the Caitlin Clark thing. So you as a Hawkeye fan, when did you start watching the girls' basketball? Was it her freshman, sophomore, junior year? When did you really start tuning in?
I knew Iowa had a solid women's basketball program for years. Lisa Bluter was the coach there. She retired last year, but she had a solid program for years. I always knew they were in the tournament and a lot of times getting the first or second round, maybe every once in a while the Sweet 16. So, but their games weren't on TV, so you didn't know who the players were. You didn't get a chance to watch them a whole lot. You just kind of saw the scores here and there. But, the last 4 or 5 years, even women's basketball at the Division I level, I mean, you can find a ton of games, especially if you join ESPN Plus, and you can find a lot of games. And so when I had a buddy that is a salesperson for BSN who was a big Hawkeye fan, and he told me, he's like, hey, Iowa's got this girl that's a senior at Roosevelt or somewhere in Des Moines, and she's going to go into Iowa, and she's supposed to be like the real deal. And I was like, okay.
Did you see any of her high school highlights?
I saw some on
my
YouTube.
gosh.
Crazy.
I mean, dropping 50 basically every game. It's insane.
Yeah.
You talk about dominating a state and area. Good Lord, I can't imagine a girl show. I'm just thinking about some of the local girls basketball teams running into her.
Like when I first early 2000s when I was AD and going through the Bowling Green tournaments, things like that. She reminded me in high school of what Carrie Koch was when I was watching my early 2000 years, where I mean, you could put 2 or 3 girls on Carrie Koch. She was going to find a way to still score 30, and she reminded me a lot of what Caitlin Clark was doing.
She was a rock star in our area. Everybody knows who she is.
Oh yeah,
yeah, her, and then you had Mike Smith from Vandalia.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which I didn't realize how good a team's Mexico and even Wellsville back in the day had, and the kind of players that they had. I think the one guy, does he still have the state record for scoring?
I think he does. Yeah.
I can't remember what his name is off the top of my head.
Roundtree or Round.
That sounds right. I can't.
There was two at Wellsville, and I can't think of off the top of my head, but yeah, they were as good as anybody we've probably seen in our lifetime here.
And then you had Tyronn Lue from Mexico. He played with the Lakers and coached some championship teams.
Mikey Smith was very good. I played against him. He dunked on us between our 8th grade and freshman year. We had Bowling Green had an alumni game. I was probably 2 or 3 years out of high school. They had an alumni game, and he came back and played. We played against him in that alumni game, and he was playing over in Europe then professionally. Yeah. And this dude threw him an alley-oop from half court, and he runs baseline and just jumps up and grabs it and yams it on us. It's this isn't even fair.
I was at that. I remember that.
He just killed us.
But yeah, back to Caitlin Clark. Do you watch any Pat McAfee show?
I do watch a little bit.
A little bit of his. Yeah, I know he can get a little out there, a little wild, but he had a lot to do with the driving of her I guess fame and popularity too, because he knew that she was going to Indiana, and he's a big Indiana guy. Yeah. And I guess apparently he went to a lot of the, all-stars and Olympic basketball players, the girls, and was y'all better enjoy it. Caitlin Clark's coming to town.
Yeah.
She's taking over the WNBA. Enjoy your last championship.
Last year she accounted for 40% of the WNBA's total revenue.
Yeah.
Well, at one point, the games that she was in, there was they were showing the percentage of viewership and compared to when she wasn't, the other games, and it was she was putting up triple the numbers everybody else was, just because
they're having to play in. They're moving to different stadiums everywhere they go play.
The first WNBA game to ever be moved to an actual NBA arena was because of her. Now they're all flying private. It's be nice. Don't bite the hand that feeds you.
Yeah, that's a crazy thing about this whole situation is because you didn't have this when Larry Bird and Magic Johnson came into the NBA. everybody supported him. Like, we're
That's
glad to have this.
A lot of jealousy.
And now
in the world
everybody's
today.
like all against Caitlin Clark. You see so much negative against her. It's like she's just out here trying to play basketball, and she's changing the game.
How dumb do you think it was that they left her off the Olympic team last year?
I didn't think too much of it. I thought, I don't know. There was rumors that came out that some of the players said if she's on it, I'm not type stuff, and I don't know how that whole process works. But
What causes that?
thinking-
What would be what's the reasoning for that? Why would somebody feel that way?
jealousy?
I don't get it.
Comes to my mind.
Whenever I think of like a business and marketing, the 92 Dream Team was not going to not take Michael Jordan.
Exactly.
And there was a lot of conversations on it. Well, Isaiah Thomas got left off of
Yep.
it because, a lot of people didn't like him.
Yep.
And maybe that was the reason she got left off. But you don't leave your most popular
Yeah.
basketball player
Yeah.
off the team if you're trying to grow the game.
There's a chemistry thing that definitely goes into putting those teams together. You have to have that chemistry. That's for sure. But when you're talking about a big market deal like that completely changes the needle on how much eyes are going to be watching the Olympics for
Well,
women's.
personally, I think it did help her because she didn't get a break coming out of college.
Yes.
She went straight
Yeah.
in, but then she got that break,
She did.
and she came out, and her numbers were way
better
the
the second half of the season. Yep.
So, yeah.
You think about it, she came out of almost a 40-game college and got drafted, and then starts practicing and goes right into another 35, 45
it was like
season.
it was like a 2-week turnaround. She was in Indiana, and she was practicing.
Yeah, she
Yeah,
had to have.
and in between that, she was flying all over the
Yep.
place because everybody
Yep.
wanted to interview her.
Yep.
Had endorsement deals all over the place doing commercials and stuff.
Yep.
She was running ragged. She was tired.
It's a lot.
And she plays high minutes for Iowa.
But yeah, when it comes to Iowa, sports, that was about the only time I got behind them. No offense, Matt.
I watched a video not too long ago about her. It was a video of her training. She's got a big training facility at her house now. And she shot 100 threes and she made like 89 of them.
Yeah.
It's just
She's a
insane.
tireless worker, but the other thing I love about her is she's just such a competitor. Like, you see it on her face, and, she is very, very competitive. And I've watched some interviews that she's had when her parents have been on, and they talked about, brothers playing her and just how competitive it was and how, whoever won, they were like pushing each other and getting all upset with each other. And
You could even see the dad from the stands. He was
Yep.
just watching his reaction.
Her dad actually went to the same college I did. He was a few
Really?
years before but he went to Simpson too.
I'll be dang. Small world.
Yep.
Small
There-
world.
Talking about the competitor part of it, and I seen a thing this weekend. We played down in the city, a baseball tournament. It's hard to find that line of competitor where. So, for instance, this kid, it was in a big moment in the game, and he struck out, and he kind of hit the bat down on the plate, and the coach kind of went crazy about it. And to me, it was like that kid. He was mad that he messed up. Like, he cared about it.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, you can't be doing that stuff either.
Yeah.
So there's kind of a fine line there that
I'm
you got to
glad
tell.
you brought that up because my wife and I have had this conversation with our own kids. Brock obviously started running way earlier than Ben did. Ben didn't start till middle school. Brock started, about kindergarten, first grade. He was doing some training, but early on, Brock was having some success. But then if he didn't have a good race, you could see it on his face, and he might cry or this and that. And she's like, he needs to quit acting like that. And I was like, hey, I love the competitiveness of it.
I do too.
Most kids don't have that
Yeah.
competitive where he's mad because he wants to win. He wants to win every race, and he's put a lot of time into it. And if he doesn't run well, he's mad. And he wants to fix it.
And I've seen him
Yeah,
on.
I'd rather see that than a kid that just
That's
does
what I
not
tried to
care.
tell my wife. I was like,
Yep.
hey,
That means
he'll
he
grow
cares.
out of that stage where he's crying. You've seen it where
Yeah.
kids strike out, they cry.
I think just about
they'll
every
grow
kid
out of
go-
that,
go- they
but
go
they may
through
not
that.
grow out of that competitiveness. And that's what I told her. I said, I want him to have that competitiveness because He's gonna be a lot better down the road.
I've seen it on the basketball floor too. I watched him finish a game with a broken hand playing left-handed. So like he wasn't coming out. That kid's he's a competitor.
Tough kid.
That's a good point, and I didn't even write this down, but it's one that I've talked to Kyle about. So I was around Ben more than what I was Brock, but the few times that I did go help when Brock was playing baseball, both of your kids, and I'm not just saying this because you're here, but both of your kids, whenever somebody is telling them something and trying to help them in something, whether it's, they're shooting a basketball, dribbling a basketball, or throwing a pitch, swinging a bat, they're always making eye contact, and they're always so coachable. As a dad, were you just lucky? I mean, as parents, you and Kim, did y'all just get lucky, or kind of how can you teach that, or can you teach that?
That's another great question. We got lucky, I think. I mean, I've had coaches that have coached both my kids tell us that they're not talking to their buddies when somebody else is talking. They're and I've seen it at practices where Brock will go over to the side where he can see them talking and he's really locked in, and Ben was the same way. I don't know if it's anything that we taught them other than, if I'm at a practice and I see them talking while coach is talking, I'm probably going to walk out there and say, hey, quit talking and listen to your coach, because when I'm a coach, I don't like when people are talking and when I'm trying to tell you something. If I'm talking, it generally means that it's something you need to know.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's anything we've done special, but we've just probably gotten pretty lucky on that front.
Yeah, because just being around both of them, they're just super respectful, and they actually listen. And, it's one thing to listen and just not try to make the change, but it's another thing to listen, make the change, and see the result like quickly like they do, and they pick it up too.
Well, it's not always something though that you necessarily taught, but it could be something you taught just by leading by example. Just him watching the way
watching me coach,
or
watching other coaches. Yeah, I mean they've both been around me a lot, and they were around me when I wasn't coaching them and I was coaching other teams, and I think all that was good for them to be around.
I think one of the reasons too that Bowling Green has had so much success at a high school level and in a lot of sports. Like when I was in school, basketball was big, and we had a long stretch there where we dominated in basketball. And I think a lot of it has to do with the youth programs we have around here. We have some great coaches around here, some great programs, and you can't be great in high school if you don't start when you're young.
In certain sports, absolutely.
Yeah.
Football, basketball, softball, baseball, and you've got to be playing well before you get to middle school.
Especially baseball has, and we had a whole podcast on baseball about how it's gotten way out of hand. I don't know if you watched that.
I watched some of it.
But
I didn't watch all of it.
Baseball's one of the sports that has created. I think, and I mean you can quote me on this, but I think travel baseball has started this domino effect of one sport only players. And you can bring up anything and everything, or any example you want. Aaron Judge is arguably, right now in his career, one of the best hitters to ever step on a baseball field. He was all-state in 3 different sports in high school. It may work for some kids to do one sport, and it may work out great for them, but, God, it just drives me up a wall, and they say, no, I'm just going to focus on this. It's like, well, you're missing so much more that you could be having fun over here to give yourself a break.
The burnout is real in baseball. That is for sure. They're playing so many games. They're destroying their arms before they even get into high school.
And we've had this conversation, too. When it comes to, like, pitchers and stuff, back in the day, you would have guys that would go out and throw back-to-back days.
Absolutely.
You'd have a Bob
There wasn't pitch counts when I played Little League in high school. You didn't keep track of all it. You could pitch. If you wanted to pitch every day, you throw them out there.
The pitch count didn't start in high school baseball, at least in our area, until my sophomore year.
Was that your sophomore year?
It was my sophomore year.
That was a game changer for small schools, because who's got 8 or 10 pitchers anymore?
For sure.
We've had to adjust our baseball schedule because we can't play 5 games in a week if we've only got 3 pitchers and they can't pitch. But if they pitch more than so many pitches, they can't pitch the rest, for 3 or 4 days.
I know a lot, like the tournaments and stuff we're playing in, the management becomes a big factor there.
Yeah.
Saving those. The coaches always look how many pitches he got, how many innings he's throwing. Like, we got to stop him here because we're going to have to save him for the championship game tomorrow. Those kind of situations. And if you don't have 6 good pitchers on your team, you can't go compete in these tournaments down the city. It's just not possible. You got to have a full roster.
Yep.
Yeah, and back to what I was getting ready to get into, the pitchers now, do you think with all the arm injuries and everything that, we never really heard of, like me growing up, you didn't really hear of Tommy John or anything like that. Do you think that what do you think the difference is between those players back then? Do you think it's velocity? Do you think they just weren't throwing as hard? Because it seems to me like if you're throwing 104, 105 nowadays, that's about max.
The bodies aren't built different than they used to be.
Yeah, I know.
So you're just pushing them more to the max.
But the thing about it is the technology and everything is so much better now. Why hasn't that been able to translate into today's game? There's so many injuries, and you have so many pitchers that come up that dominate for a year or two, then they have an injury and they're done.
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know. But you're right. You don't see pitchers that go 6, 7, 8 years in a row without losing about a half a season somewhere along the way.
Well, and the way they've tried to mitigate it now is how many times you see a pitcher throw a full game now. Most of the time they go out
hardly ever.
And drives me up a wall. I've talked to Brad Hufty about this a few times. You have a guy going out, he's got a shutout going, and he's 5, 6 innings. They'll just pull him and bring in a. There's been games in the MLB within the past 2 or 3 years where they've had a team no hitter.
Yes,
Guys throwing a no hitter and they pull him out of the game.
Yep.
I cannot.
Teams have spent so much money on those guys that throw 1 inning, the 6th, 7th, and 8th, and then to get to your closer, and those guys are a lot of times throwing maybe 4 or 5 days out of 7,
Yeah.
So I mean, those guys get wore out too, by the end of the year.
It's got to be aggravating for you as a pitcher if you go out there and
If
you've thrown a 5-inning no hitter and you're like,
throwing a no hitter
you
and
get
they were
pulled.
trying to pull me, I'd
be saying no.
that would be a hard pill for me to swallow.
Yeah, agree.
All right, so back to we'll jump off the baseball tangent here. So I think for me, like whenever I think of somebody who stays pretty dang healthy, I kind of look at you, with your running and everything. A couple years ago, you made the announcement that you'd ended up with throat cancer. Kind of walk us through that process, how you kind of found out, kind of what maybe it was something that you found on your.
Yeah. That whole process of finding out I had cancer started with, I just got done shaving. It was late at night, and I just kind of lifted my head back like this, and I thought I noticed like just a little lump sitting there. So I started feeling around. I was like, yeah, it feels like, never noticed it before. And normally I've probably been to the doctor before that maybe 3 times in the 10 years previous to that. I mean, I just, I've, for the most part, been pretty healthy. But I felt that, and I just like the next day I was like, I need to go get this checked out, and which was very surprising that I would just go the next day without sitting and waiting 2 or 3 weeks, see if it went away.
Yeah, because how many people would have just went? A lot of us would have probably just been like, well, we'll see what happens.
So I just went over there, and they walked across the street. It was like middle of the day at school, and I just took a few minutes off, went to the doctor, and had him look at it, and it was Dr. Cole Schurter, which is a kid that I had known, that went through Bowling Green. And, he messed around with it for a little bit and just said, I don't think it's anything, but, we really don't know. So then we kind of started doing some different things and some ultrasounds, and we could see it there. We just didn't know what it was, and so we finally did a biopsy on it, and then it came back that I had squamous cell cancer. They think it's more like the HPV cancer that a lot of men in the early 40s are getting now. Kind of obviously threw me for a loop, as the process was going on. 2 or 3 weeks later, you started thinking that something may not be right because it just wasn't going away. And I remember I was hosting a middle school track meet, and I was up in the press box, and I got a call from Dr. Schroeder and saying it was cancer. And at that time I had a meet that night that I had to run. It's not like I could go home and figure out what I was going to do. I mean, you're in charge of running off a track meet, and I was the only one that knew how to run the scoring system that day. So I was up in the press box pretty much all night punching in results and doing that. But
and in your head the whole time.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah. I just, I didn't do a lot of sleep in the next week. And, there's been obviously great advances in cancer the last, 20 years, but still, when you hear the word cancer, a lot of times the first thing you think of is you're going to die.
Yeah. Yeah.
The thing we didn't know at the time when he mentioned I had cancer, we just didn't know, if it had spread. So, we didn't know if it was everywhere, if it was just here. So Dr. Schroeder got me set up with a Dr. Jorgensen in Columbia, and we went up to see him, and he looked at it, and he specializes in this type of cancer, and he was great to work with. And he looked at it and came in and says, yeah, I'm not sure this is cancer, but we're not going to know until we take it out. So we need to get surgery and get it out. So, you go home, you're like, hey, I may not have cancer. And, so I'm, feeling a little bit better. And so then we went in and went in for surgery. And I think it was maybe 3 or 4 days later, was able to get in really quick, which was a blessing. And, they did the surgery and woke up out of surgery, and doc came and said, hey, we did find out it was cancer. There was several lymph nodes that had cancer in it. We took out what we could, but we feel like we need to do some radiation and chemo too. So we set that up at Hannibal to do that. And I finished the state track meet that year. And then that Monday we started with radiation chemo. And
did they say like what causes it? It's just,
I
know we all have cancer cells in us.
We all have HPV in our bodies, and some people for some reason it just turns into cancer. A lot of it kind of never materializes to cancer, but this one did. And if you look at, just if you ever Google, HPV or throat cancer, you'll see that I've seen a couple videos on NBC, even NBC Nightly News, that had it on a lot of people in their early 40s are getting this. And that's where I was. I was in my early 40s when I got it.
What was the radiation treatment like for you?
Brutal. Before they did the radiation and chemo, they kind of sit you down and say, okay, these are the things you're probably going to go through. And of course, I'm young, and, I'm like, oh, I'm going to be fine. I'll get through all this. And he's telling me all this, but yeah, it probably won't hit me too bad. And I think first 2 weeks you didn't notice anything. And then after about the third week, you started, they're hitting your neck so hard with radiation, and the back of the tongue is where they think the cancer started, and then it kind of latched onto some lymph nodes in my neck. So after about 3 weeks, I started noticing, eating was becoming a problem, a lot of sores, painful sores in your mouth. Your neck is obviously fried because of just the radiation. But it was like I think it was a 6 or 7 week radiation treatment. So, I wasn't quite halfway done, and I was like, oh, this is getting tough. I got through about I think I had about maybe 2 weeks left, and I just got to the point where I couldn't eat. I could, every time I tried to eat, I would cough for 30 minutes. It was just, you didn't even want to think about eating. They'd give you these shakes to try to, just try to get nutrients and stuff in your body. And we tried those, and it was just hard to get down. And if I did get it down, I was coughing, and it was just miserable. So I got to the point where, the doctor had mentioned before that you may get to the point where you have to put a feeding tube in. When he said that, I was like, I don't even know what a feeding tube is. I was like, what is that going to do? And basically, we'll have surgery, and you'll have a tube, and you'll
syringe it in.
Syringe it in, yeah. And we did that for 2 months, and it was able to just kind of keep me going. But I got through about the last week of radiation. I think there was the Tuesday of the last week. I kind of, because my wife had been taking me every day because I couldn't drive and couldn't do any of that. I said, I think this might be the last treatment. I said, I think it's done enough. I don't think I can make it through Friday. And, we kind of talked to the doctor, and he's like, I think these last few radiation treatments could be the difference in killing everything or leaving some of it in there. And I was like, all right. So we got through it.
So what is it that they like put on you? Is it, on your neck? Like what is it?
The instrument?
Yeah.
There's like a face mask. It's kind of like I consider it's like a hockey mask that they put over any, because the radiation is so potent that they want to make sure they're just hitting the areas they want to.
Gotcha.
So, and it only took it was like 10 or 12 minutes that you were in there for the radiation.
And it just burned.
And that wasn't the worst part. It's just everything else around the neck, the swallowing, everything. It just, I mean, and then they were getting the back of my tongue. So my tongue was just fried. So it just hurt to do anything, Yeah,
I bet so.
A lot, just a lot of pain, a lot of discomfort. That last week doing just a lot of sleeping, just basically just trying to get through.
Did you lose all your hair?
I just lost patches in the back. I didn't lose a bunch up here, but did lose a little bit. It was a struggle. I mean, I knew, I obviously seen a lot of people go through radiation and chemo and stuff, and I don't know what I was thinking going in, but I just thought, I would get through it with a breeze.
Everybody,
you've been healthy your whole life.
Exactly.
I mean, I know whenever I'd first heard about, that you had throat cancer, I remember talking to like my family and, a lot of my friends and just people in the community, like, if Matt Chance got cancer, it does not discriminate. Anybody can get it, because that's one of the healthiest people that I know.
And everybody knows somebody or is close to somebody who's had cancer, but you don't ever think that's going to be you.
Yeah.
You never think you're going to be that person that it happens to. And like you said, cancer does not discriminate.
Nope.
It does not care.
And I just think it's gotten worse to the last, 10, 15 years.
Do you think that, and I would agree with that. Do you feel like that is diet related, chemically related?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
All the chemicals and stuff they put in all this to try to, preserve food and stuff?
Yep, I do.
Do you watch what you eat now? From that, start to stay away from more of that kind of stuff, or
not really? I still, I wouldn't say I'm a real healthy eater, but I love. I mean, everybody loves fast food, but
it's so easy.
I eat a lot of fast food and stuff, but I think it's some of the long-term effects that I've had from having cancer is I'll never be able to swallow like I used to. Like, I mean, I'm a slow eater anymore because it's just I got to have water or something to help get it, get the food down a lot of times. And, it's something that you just live with. And if that's the worst thing I have to deal with, I'll take that,
Yep, you're still here raising your kids.
Yep,
so
exactly.
That's the important thing.
Exactly. But, the whole, the getting cancer and things like that, and a lot of people won't agree with me on this, but I feel like the time after cancer, all of the things I'd done athletically, all of the awards, honors, discipline, training, setbacks, adversity that you went, I just felt like it had prepared me when I got cancer that, it's just something that I think sports helped me deal with. And, I took it as a challenge. I mean, when that first day of
you had the
chemo,
right mindset.
I was like, let's go, I'm ready to go. Let's get after this. And even afterward, I think my recovery, I did a lot of praying. I really was probably closer
you had
to
a community and a lot of people
That was
outside the community.
That was going to be one of my questions. I know that you are obviously connected to a lot of people in the community and know a lot of people, and the outpouring of support that we've seen across social media, and everybody we talked to was talking about it. Like, what was that like, the outpouring of support? From
Incredible. I mean, obviously wasn't feeling great during that time, but I mean, every time you turned around, you would see people posting Team Chance shirts, and I know Rainey was a big person behind that, and those are things you never forget. I mean, those people I'll be in debt to them for the rest of my life. They did a thing at the snack, or the what's the shaved ice place? I can't think of. They did something.
I know what you're talking about.
And I can't think of the name right now off the top of my head, but they did an all day thing and raised a tremendous amount of money. My cross country kids and girls put on a 5K race for me, and that was right about the point where I was like the last day before I went and had surgery. I was like my last good day before I really took a turn. But those are things that that I'll never forget. And even to this day, like when people get diagnosed with cancer, if there's people I know, I'll reach out to them and just say, hey, I'm praying for you. Yeah. Let me know if you need anything. And I've had people contact me with the same type of cancer I've had and just say, hey, I know you had this. Tell me what tell me what I need to expect, what I need to do. And, I feel like that's been a blessing to be able to help other people that have had similar types of cancer.
For sure.
Going through something like that, and I dealt with my fair share of health problems. I haven't talked about it on here before, but I went through a 2-year period where I almost died. Like, I was sick for a long time. I got down to like 130 pounds. Oh, wow. And was in and out of hospitals all over the country, and it was a long process. That doesn't matter. But through that experience, the things you learn about your community and the people around you and the support you get, people think of sports and they think that it's just this thing that people do as a pastime. But look at the people that it's connected you to. Yep. Look at the things that sports has done for your life and your community, and it's not just a little thing at the end of the day. It might seem that way, but like we talked about, the lessons it taught you to get through that situation, for one, and the people that it connects you to. I know some of my best friends to this day are people that I've met through sports. The people that I am closest to, I've met through sports. I mean, me and Corey, I've kind of met through playing golf together. Yep. When we first really started hanging out of high school, one of my best friends I've met through baseball. It is a very important part to society.
Yep. And I think the longer you stay in a place, the more people you're going to know, and you're going to know their kids. And and I've had kids in cross country that, I coach their dads and moms, and that's when
awesome.
You've been there for a long time, But yeah, when all that was going on with the community, rallying behind that, it was another sentiment to me that I knew I was in the right place. I knew that this is where God wanted me to be. And, when the job was offered, it was my job to accept it and get down here and get to work. And, I was talking to somebody the other day. I just finished year number 27, but it feels like year number 13 or 12. It doesn't feel like I've been here that long. But, again, when you're doing something you enjoy, it goes by a lot quicker.
Having, your faith through that situation too is a big thing. Yep. We talk about it a lot here on the podcast, and having faith in God and Jesus and what all that can do for you too. And that just, knowing that He's got your back through this is big too.
Yeah. I was praying a lot during that time. I was praying before I ever got cancer too, but just praying that, that He would help me through this, and that, and I knew I had a lot of people praying for me, a lot of people, I was on a lot of prayer lists and things like that. And you just felt like there was something uplifting to you every day that you got out of bed, knowing that you're going to have to go sit up there and take radiation for 15 minutes and feel like crap the rest of the day. But you just felt like there was a purpose to get through this. It was almost like I tell people, it was like, I knew this was a step I had to get through to get help, to get well. I never felt like when I started take cancer that I wasn't going to beat it. Never once I was like, cancer's going to get me. Even when I was feeling bad, I was like, it's just a step I got to go through. The Lord's, testing me to see how much faith I have in him. And I never questioned him about why I got it. I knew there was a reason he wanted me to go through it.
I almost, what you just said there with testing you, when I went through mine, I kind of look back at it now as it was a test of that. I think at the end of the day, when I got through it, I think I'm a better person.
Yeah, I absolutely 100% agree that I'm better for having been through that.
For sure.
And there's a grass path down our house, and if I'm not running, I'm being active. I'm walking around. I'm just an active person. And my last couple of weeks of radiation, I was at the point where, if I had 100 steps in a day, that was probably pretty good. But some of the medication I was on, I couldn't be outside if it was sunny because it'd make you even sicker. Mm-hmm. But I had this grass path, and every day I would walk down about, maybe 2 or 3 minutes worth and back. And that was my time that me and the Lord I just talk to him and, just pray a lot. And, some days it was hot and I'd get back in and Kim was like, you're going to get sick, aren't you? And I'm like, yeah, I might have walked a little bit too far on that one. But, I just feel like I was never closer to God than during that time. And, I think he was a big reason why my recovery was so quick. And one thing about my recovery that, I've talked about my cancer. I've given a couple speeches, since that time, but one of the things that I always bring up in that speech is during my walks on that grass path, one of the things I talked to the Lord about was I was like, God, I want to be the quickest healer of throat cancer that anybody's ever seen. And I was praying that daily. I was like, I want to be the fastest because I want to get back. Cross country's getting ready to start. I don't want anybody having to coach my team. I'm paid to do it. I need to be there, and I need to be there on day one. And so when I was praying that, I wasn't able to eat at the time, but I started to go into a speech pathologist, and they were trying to introduce eating to me again so that we could finally get this feeding tube out. And we did a few sessions. He's like, you're doing really well, did a few more. And we were supposed to do like 8 sessions, and she canceled the last 3 sessions. She said, man, I've never had anybody go as quickly through this recovery as you. I'm canceling the last 3. She says, wow. You're ready to get this out and start eating, and there's nothing more I can do for you. And I always thought that was, something I'd prayed, regularly about. And she goes, you're the fastest guy we've ever, we've never canceled appointments before. And, sure. And you're ready to go.
Yeah, that's a testimony right there. That's awesome.
I have another question, and I don't know if this is something you can even really talk about a lot, but from this conversation with your faith and your relationship with God, what it has done to you and, the things you've been through and the ways it's helped you. In schools nowadays, there's kind of like this push to kind of get away from religion. Is that hard for you to, as somebody who is supposed to be molding these kids, to not kind of have that aspect of life?
Yeah, a little bit. On the coaching side of it, if you've ever been to our cross country meets, we usually huddle up right before a race. We'll, everybody will put their arms around each other, and we always pray. And no one's ever really said anything. In fact, the last few years, the girls ask me to lead the prayer, and I have no problem doing that. I've heard other coaches where they've been fired for that too, and we're told they can't do it anymore.
I hope our community does not get to that point.
And I always they always are the ones that, kind of get it going. And then I just kind of come in at the end, talk a little bit. And then they're like, hey coach, would you pray? And absolutely.
That's awesome.
So it's kind of the team led. But it's hard to see what's happened within schools. And I wish that would change.
That's awesome. That's what I like to hear. We know that's why we are in the community that we are in. That's why we love our community, is because of people like that. Yep. It gives me a good outlook on my son's future coming up through the Bowling Green school system.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I kind of got a deep one here. You might have to think about it.
Oh boy.
If Matt Chance now could go back and talk to your younger self, what piece of advice or what would you want to tell him?
That's a great question. Probably to enjoy it a little bit more than I did, maybe. People don't realize how fast 4 years of high school go. I mean, it's just incredibly fast. And I don't think a lot of kids anymore enjoy it as much as they used to. And, you know, I had a great high school experience, had a great college experience. I've had a great experience here at Bowling Green, but it just goes by so darn fast. And I think I would tell myself to enjoy every bit of it, enjoy every second of it.
Yeah, like live in the moment.
Yep, live in the moment. Don't, you know, I'm always one of those guys. I like to look a year in advance. You know, even my teams. Hey, we're going to be really good in a year or two, or and just stay in the now and just enjoy what you've got going on right in front of you. Because you know you're not guaranteed tomorrow either. You know.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would agree with that, because I mean, once you get out of school, time just flies by. Like, I'm already out. This is 10 years. Wow. I've been out of high school, and it seems like it was a couple of years ago.
Feels like yesterday. Wow. Yeah. Even me, it still feels like it wasn't that long ago I was in high school, and it's been almost 20 years now.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It just flies by. And everybody just can't wait to get out of school, and go on. Like, well, you don't realize it yet, but you don't want to be in the real world yet.
No, and you do. You still hear that today. And you're like, I can't wait to get out of high school. And it's like, man, just enjoy it.
Yeah, participate in everything that you can participate in school, because once you're out, you'll regret it if you don't. Yeah. That's what I always tell kids. They're like, I don't know if I'm going to play next year. Like, play.
Yep.
Even if you think you don't want to, play.
Yep.
Get out there and do it, because you'll never have a chance to ever do this again, probably.
And I've had that conversation with many kids. It's like that I'm trying to recruit to come out. They're like, "Nah, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to work and this and that." I'm like, "Man, this you got a small period in your life to be an athlete. Enjoy it. Be a part of a team. You're helping your friends. You're helping your school be competitive. There's time to work later on.
You'll have plenty of time to work later on. Trust us."
Yep. Well, have we been going for a while now? Maybe.
Yeah, we got another 45 minutes in here, so.
You ready to kind of wrap this up? I got one final question here for you.
Yep.
That we're going to end it on. You've been doing this for a while. How many years you said you've
27.
been? 27 years. You've been doing it for quite a while. You've been very successful, very well respected. You've helped shape a lot of kids in the community, and molding probably thousands of kids. You've probably had the chance of helping out. How do you want to be remembered when you're done with your career?
I just want to be remembered as a good person. I really, I mean, some people will think you're a good coach, great coach, bad coach. I mean, that comes and goes. But the kids that I've worked with over the years, I've just always tried to give a lot of respect to, and in turn, they've given me a lot of respect. And that makes it so much more enjoyable that I can go to Walmart anytime, and I'll probably see a kid that I've coached along the way, and they'll still talk to me and say, "Hey, Coach, how you doing? Hey, great. How's things going for you?" That means a lot to me, is that I've met a lot of people through Bowling Green schools, and that I've tried to give their kids a lot of respect, and tried to work them hard too, and take them to points that they didn't think they could reach. But at the end of the day, and at the end of my time at Bowling Green, I just want to be remembered as somebody who cared about kids, got excited, was their biggest supporter, and just helped them get through high school with a positive experience.
Well, I'm pretty sure you've accomplished that. So
Yeah, the best we can see it. Yeah, you've done that, and you've been a big part of the community, and a lot of people are behind you, and
We're very lucky. We're very lucky
that,
to have
yeah,
you.
we hope that you stay around for a lot longer, but I'm sure retirement. It's maybe every year it might be getting a little bit closer here.
It's getting closer.
Do you to kind of end this out? You want to give us a. You want to tell us when you're going to retire here?
I get asked that quite a bit now that I'm getting close to 30 years.
People would be asking me why I didn't ask you that. But
I've got, I've been through a couple of the retirement seminars, and I tell people anywhere from 2 to 6 years. 6 years would be Brock's senior year, and 2 years would be Rule of 80. Rule of 86 would be, I think, 5 years. So there is some, obviously there's, when you're thinking about retirement, the Rule of 86 is obviously going to be better than the Rule of 80. But, I really haven't thought too much about it because I still enjoy what I'm doing. And I don't know, I've got to go do something. I'm not just going to retire and sit at home.
That golf game is going to get real
yeah,
good.
And a lot of those months you can't play golf because it's so darn cold in the wintertime. But yeah, I tell people anywhere from 2 to 6, and like I said, I just finished number 27, and it was another very successful year for our school district, and have no plans of giving it up here in the next year or two.
I'm sure people wouldn't care if you stayed longer than 6. I'm sure.
I don't know. After that Rule of 86, I think they say you end up losing money. So
you could finish it off with a Brock Chance state championship here.
There you go. Well, Matt, we sure appreciate you coming on. It's always good talking to you.
It's a lot of fun, guys. Appreciate it. I'm glad you guys are doing this. This is a
lot of fun. We're kind of just getting started, but we enjoy it. Have some great conversations.
There's a lot of great people in this community and around that I think you can find somebody at least once a week to do something like this, and
that's what we're trying to shoot for here, once a week or once every other week. Yep. But well, we wish you the best of luck here. I know what'd you say, cross country is getting ready?
Cross country workouts start Tuesday.
Yep. So we're already back. The track just got over. Now we're back.
2 week break. I always got to give myself a couple weeks.
But all right. Well, we hope y'all enjoyed to listen to this one, and big thanks to Matt for coming on. Anyways, y'all have a good one.
Take care.
Thank you.